Welcome, everybody. My name is Robin Concanen-Lar, and I am a member of PennTASH and will be your moderator this evening. So we want to welcome all of you. As we are getting started, we would like to suggest that you put your name in the chat and tell us maybe where you're coming from tonight. Feel free to also share whether you are a student, a family member, an educator, or carry on some other role in some capacity. And the chat function you should be able to find located at the bottom of your screen. So we can see maybe who's joining us and from where. So we are going to start tonight with this first of 3 webinar series. This one is titled The Basics, the Myths, and the Possibilities. And as I said, this is the first webinar in our series of 3. So we're going to have a second webinar actually next Wednesday, same time, September 10th. And that will be called Planning for Success. And then our third webinar will be Real Talk, the college experience, and that will be held on Wednesday, September 17th. We'd like to remind you that if you've not registered for webinar 2 and 3, and we hope you will, that you can do so. We will be putting the link in the chat for you to locate that if you can. At the onset, before we get started, we're doing a few housekeeping things here. We want to acknowledge and express our gratitude to Rita Jo Scarcella and her staff of interpreters at Sign of the Times. They are providing the sign language interpreting for our webinars. And tonight's interpreters are Heather Ivy and Jay Wexler. Also, we want to let you know that closed captioning is available by accessing the toolbar located at the bottom of your screen. You should see the words show captions, although sometimes different, depending on how you have your screen organized and what size it is, it may vary, but you should see the word show captions. So for the next hour and a half, we will be sharing stories, perspectives, information, and resources, all with the intended goal to empower possibilities for inclusive post-secondary education. We value and know that inclusion works, right? So how to make it a valued and meaningful option in post-secondary education will be part of the conversation that we begin tonight and carry throughout the different webinars. But we also want you to be a part of this conversation, and so we encourage you to post comments and questions in the Q&A function, and that can be found on the toolbar under the word more, or again, depending on how you have the size of your screen, you actually may see Q&A posted outright. We've scheduled time at the conclusion of our presentations for some questions and answers, and we're hoping to address as many as we can, but we will also use your comments and questions to inform and shape our following webinars as well. So this slide we want to show you, you'll see the PennTASH logo, and you'll also see there TASH 50. So in case you may not be as familiar with PennTASH, though PennTASH is a chapter of National TASH, and that's an organization that advances equity, opportunity, and inclusion for people with disabilities, and it's celebrating its 50th year anniversary this year. So PennTASH, as a chapter of the National TASH, we're really a voice for inclusion, not only at our local level, but at the state level and national level. So the members of PennTASH are very involved and engaged in lots of different ways. If you would like to know more or are interested in becoming a member of TASH, we're putting the links also in the chat for you to locate those and follow up as you wish. Also, all 3 webinars are being recorded and will be posted to the TASH YouTube channel. You will have access to a variety of resources that we will also post with the viewing. And all webinar attendees will receive an email notifying you when the videos and resources have been posted to the TASH YouTube channel. So we're really excited about this webinar series because it really speaks to our core value of inclusion, and because this now gives us a platform to specifically address post-secondary education from the inclusion lens, and specifically for individuals with intellectual disability and developmental disabilities. So in that regard, we're grateful for the funding that we have been given to make these webinars possible. So we have been given funds through what's called TISPID, or Transition and Post-Secondary Programs for Students with Intellectual Disabilities grant through Millersville University and their PA Inclusive Higher Education Consortium. So we're grateful for that. And we also want to give a big shout out to the Education Committee of PennTASH. Several of my colleagues who are here tonight have done a tremendous job in planning for these webinars. And also to National TASH, specifically Donald Taylor, who's assisting in the registration, marketing, and the Zoom logistics for the webinars. So thank you to everybody who's been involved. And with that, what's our plan for today's webinar? So we're going to go over or share with you, first of all, some student perspectives. We're going to chat briefly what we call legally speaking. What's the difference legally between students with disabilities who are in high school and students with disabilities who go to college? And we're going to dispel some of those myths about post-secondary education. And then we're going to look at some of the basics. And those basics are, we want you to know what some of the infrastructure or framework that is present in Pennsylvania and nationwide, and some of the models that are out there for inclusive post-secondary education. And you may be surprised, there's a lot more happening out there than you may have heard, but we want you to think about, as we say in our title, all the possibilities where these models can be used as maybe a place to launch something that's going to be unique and wonderful for, if you're a parent, for your own child, and if you're an educator, for how you can be active in supporting that through transition planning. So the next slide. So that was our plan. And what do we want you to take away with? Well, we want you to gain insights from the student perspective. It is so important. And I know that many of you value this as well, to hear the authentic voice of the students, their dreams, their visions, what they want to experience, what they have been experienced. So each of our webinars will provide that student perspective. We also want you to hopefully have some clarification or gain some more information about the legal right differences between K through 12 and college settings, to recognize the myths to inclusive post-secondary education, and as I said, debunk some of those, and then also to learn inclusive post-secondary education frameworks and models. And we just want you to gain lots of knowledge and some resources to take away, which in every capacity you have in your role. Okay, so now we're going to introduce our presenters and moderators. So I've listed them in alphabetical order for you here. So first of all, I'm going to highlight, actually going to jump to Lavender Pearl Capanis Palucci, and she is one of our student presenters. Lavender is currently, and let me see, is everybody being shown? Perfect, Lavender. Great to see you. She's currently a third-year college student at the Penn State World Campus, which offers online degree programs. She's working on her bachelor's degree in energy, sustainability, and policy. During her first year in college, she received a Student Leadership Award. And last year, she was a Penn State World Campus representative at the Martin Luther King Jr. Gala. She's also a youth representative for Families to the Max, and that's the number 2. Okay, so Lavender, we look forward to hearing from you. We also have as a presenter Dr. Domenico Cavigliolo, and he's given me permission to say Domenico so that I don't mispronounce his name repeatedly. Domenico is a professor of special education. If we can see Domenico on. He's a professor of special education and the coordinator of the Rehabilitation and Human Services program at East Stroudsburg University. He's been involved in the field of rehabilitation and special education for over 45 years at various levels. And in 2010, Domenico developed a post-secondary education program called SILS, and that stands for Career Independent Living and Learning Studies, and that's at East Stroudsburg University, which you will hear more about a little bit later in the webinar. Domenico has published books and authored and co-authored numerous articles on topics related to special education and employment. Most recently, he has co-authored 2 books, one called Growing Up, Transition to Adult Life for Students with Disabilities, and Through Their Eyes. So his philosophy is all about creating environments of student and consumer choice, inclusion, and empowerment. So thank you, Domenico. We look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so I'm doing double duty tonight. I'm your moderator, but I'm also going to sneak in and give you some information about the legal aspects. So it's always uncomfortable talking about yourself, but I'll be brief. So I'm an attorney and founder of the disability rights law firm Innovating for Justice. I focus my practice primarily representing families and individuals with disabilities in special education law matters. My work involves advocacy also through education and training, and I do a lot of training on universal design for learning and inclusive practices. I'm also a professor at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I teach special education courses to future teachers through the lens of equity and inclusion. I've spoken at numerous national, state, and local conferences and always enjoyed doing that, giving the message of inclusion. And I've authored and co-authored several articles on self-determination, inclusion, and universal design for learning. And I'm also excited to say that I recently co-authored the book Designing for Inclusion, Universal Design for Learning as a Catalyst in the IEP Process. I'm passionate about disability justice, short and simple, and I'm proud to be a member of PennTASH and also the chair of the Education Committee for Pennsylvania PennTASH. Next up, we have Dr. Thomas Newville. He has served as Professor of Special Education and Disability Studies in the Department of Educational Foundations and Special Education at Millersville University in Millersville, Pennsylvania. Hopefully we can see him as well. He has more than 50 years experience in education, community, and organizational development. He is recognized internationally for preserving and archiving the work of Dr. Wolfensberger into a video format. His most recent work has been centered on designing coherent models of inclusive post-secondary education, and he's involved as the principal investigator for the PA Inclusive Higher Education Consortium. He continues to work with the education communities to develop strategies that are founded on social justice and focused on true personalization. And Dr. Newville founded Integrated Studies. You will hear also more about this. It's an inclusive post-secondary program for students with intellectual disability at Millersville. And he has created the first approved BA MDST Applied Disability Studies at Millersville University. So looking forward to hearing about that. Next, we have Mia Noel Rodriguez, and I hope we can see you as well. Welcome, Mia. Mia is currently a high school student in Pennsylvania. Okay, so she's thinking about college. She's a member of her high school honors chorale, the Westchester Children's Chorus in residence at Westchester University, and the nationally recognized Spotlight Kids Ensemble. Mia was recently inducted into the International Thespian Society. She's trained in voice, acting, and dance, and performs nationally as a soloist and alongside other well-renowned musical artists. Most recently, you might have seen Mia starring in the musical video No Decision Without Us. That's part of a global campaign for inclusivity produced by CoreDown. Mia describes herself as a passionate self-advocate who began speaking up for herself during IEP meetings in middle school to express her goals and dreams, which include combining her passions for music and fashion while promoting disability representation and breaking barriers. So welcome you, Mia, as well. And then last but not least, we have moderators Kathy Brill, Colleen Tomko, and Betsy Winter Hall. And they are assisting in various capacities in our webinar, including in the Q&A. They are all TASH board members and active members of our education committee. They are also all proud parents of either former college or prospective college students. So I hope that you feel surrounded by some very talented, wonderful folks who are going to share some of their experiences and insights with all of you. Okay, so now we're going to begin by hearing from our student presenters, Lavender and Mia. Okay, so let me, you can actually go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with Lavender. And we have talked a little bit the last couple of days, and I feel like that I would just want to have a whole webinar just listening to the students, but we're trying to get lots of different pieces in here. So anyway, let's start with this. I remember, Lavender, when I was in college, and I'd come home or whatever, people would always say, what do you like about college? How's college going? And so forth. So I'm going to just ask you, what's your favorite part about college?
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Lavender. So what is my favorite part about college? So, as a Penn State World Campus student, Penn State World Campus is recognized as one of a branch campus of Penn State University, and it's also recognized as its own university for its own excellence. So I am able to have the opportunity as a Penn State World Campus student to be involved with research opportunities that Penn State has. As part of my degree, I am able to travel abroad for me to graduate with my degree and do research while I'm there. And they are able to see me as a person who is able to not only want to pursue my degree, but being able to thrive and also strive to be a better person overall. And they are not recognizing the bunch of disabilities that I do have. I have multiple. Some of them are autism, ADHD, which stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety, depression, um, and post-traumatic stress disorder. But they recognize that all of the challenges that I do face, including other disabilities, and they saw me as a person first, and they recognized my potential to grow and to know that as I say, we are Penn State, that we are is truly the definition of all of us are here to make a difference, not just one person, but you are part of the whole connection of being able to make a difference at Penn State World Campus.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it's wonderful to hear you say that because to me, it brings the word that you feel this like sense of belonging, that you really belong, and that maybe that's in contrast to other experience that you had. So it's wonderful that you are going to college and that one of your favorite parts about it is that it feels good in so many different ways. So thanks for sharing that.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we have another question for you. And
Absolutely.
okay. So you are majoring in energy sustainability and policy. So curious as to if you can tell us maybe a little bit more about the major and what kind of work and career you're looking forward to after graduation.
Sure, absolutely. So I am currently only 22 years old, and I did not start college after high school. I decided after high school I was going to figure out what did I want to do in the long run. And what I want to do in the long run is be a politician. I know that might questionably be wondering of how does that fit in with my degree. So I was able to figure out that I want to focus having a career that if I go into a career, I want to make policies that are able to help be the greater good of all time and help focus on renewable energy sources like wind power, hydroelectric power, solar power, wind, and all other new sources that are willing to come out. But I don't plan on going straight into the workforce right after I finish with my Bachelor of Science degree. I plan on continuing my education because I honestly want to help ensure that as I'm doing all of this work that I have put towards trying to my education right now, I want to keep going and help ensure that I can even maybe achieve another bachelor's degree after this, or a master's degree, and even hopefully a doctorate in the future. And I'm really hoping that one of these days I will be able to help save the world, um, in a number of different ways, not just in the fact that we can have sustainable energy, but policies that are able to help make sure that people with disabilities and other communities are able to be included because we're usually not thought of when it comes to talking about energy and sustainability policy and how does that impact our world. And how does the world revolve around energy when we are the ones who might be making a lot of energy because we are reliant on, like, having to rely on either different machines to help us with our being able to breathe, like Dr. Josie Badger, she uses a machine to help her. And so, but that's producing a lot of energy. So how do we make sure that there are sustainability policies to help make sure that the energy she is using are going to be helpful for the planet instead of having to rely on something like the coal or the oil or the natural gas industry that are powering the electric sockets that are going to be able to plug in her machine whenever she needs it. But thank you. I'll be quiet now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I know a lot of 22-year-olds, and I wouldn't say that a lot of them are as thoughtfully considerate and know where they're going as you do. So thank you for all of that. And, whether you have political aspirations or not, the fact that you're going into sort of policy, you're really creating some space where it gives you different options. So kudos to you for thinking all that through. So we have another question for you, and this is kind of two parts. So first of all, what helps you to do well and be successful in college? And then the second question is, what is the most difficult part about college for you? And answer those either together or separate, however you would like.
So I'll answer them separately. So for me to do well in college, let me also back up into also sharing the fact that I do have multiple disabilities, including executive functioning skills. My executive functioning skills are not the greatest, and nor have they been. I have tried to develop a plan of action to be able to help make sure that this year and as I move along into the future years of college and also furthering that by going into other universities and or the same university, I'm able to devise a list um, of assignments through color coding and also having a schedule book that is able to help more or less signify, okay, for my one class that I'm taking English 202D, which stands for business writing, and I have it colored in blue. And those assignments that are marked in blue are signifying that is my business class, my business writing class. And that's how I am able to keep track. Then, secondly, what is the most difficult part about college for me? Um, that also goes in hand of having my executive functioning problems. I also have a visual tracking disorder, and as I get up into higher classes, I'm going to be required to take more math based courses that are strictly focusing on having to rely on math graphs that are like, for example, micro I'm taking macroeconomic analysis. As I'm taking macroeconomic analysis, I'm going to have to be analyzing graphs, but doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to take the class. I have to take the class. It's for my major. So I'm going to have to adapt by looking at trying to find a piece of blank white paper to be able to line up with my laptop to be able to look at points and being able to graph points whenever there comes an assignment where I will need to graph points and to find the gross domestic product of a country and to be able to say this point at 2016 is where this country has been able to rise or drop in terms of their GDP and why, and explain that through graphing it. So I have to more or less try to see that all of these difficult points are in the most difficult parts about college. I can make adaptations for them, but I also need to talk to the disability office. And that's really difficult because I don't like having to ask for help and having to ask my professors for more help or additional time when I'm not like trying to blow them off, but I need more time to be able to really hone in on making sure that I truly can do the assignment with actual decency behind it and without having my own like there are times where I travel, so accommodate my own accommodations, I have to make them up on the fly even. So, yes, I'm sorry. I'll
No,
be
don't
quiet now.
apologize. No, these are great. And there's so much that you've said that I think are connected to some of the discussions we're going to have both in this webinar and the other ones. But I think one of the things that you really highlight by what you're saying is that it's very important, the process of learning and for students and all of us to know how we learn and how we can be successful. And I, in my own work, see that it's very important for educators to be working with students with disabilities to not only teach the content, but to help students understand the why of their learning and how they learn. And that's going to set them up for success. So whether you came up with this on your own or you had supports in high school or whatever, you really demonstrate an important point. So thank you for that sharing.
You. I totally
Okay,
agree.
I think we have one more question for you. So this webinar is all about possibilities. And so I want to ask you, what has college made possible for you?
So I was able to realize that I have very high expectations for myself, and that as I am trying to balance that idea of I want to go and get a doctorate, I must realize that I need to balance my life out by recognizing that I'm currently just trying to achieve a Bachelor of Science degree right now. And if I am too much ingrained of, well, I need to take multiple classes so I can get closer to being into a doctorate degree one day and push myself further, it's only going to be detrimental. So I know that I am able to balance out a better college workload if I only take 12 credits, which is considered to be full time. Does it mean I'll take longer to graduate? Absolutely. But that balance of me failing or me passing and being able to take a while to pass along what is considered to be a normal 4-year degree might turn to 5 or 6 years. That's the better weighing option for me instead of failing, which I find that to be more of a struggle for me because I would feel like I not only failed myself, but I managed to fail the fact that I wanted to achieve something bigger, but I didn't get to that point even if I just let the failure consume me. So I have to be mindful of the balance of what do I do to help ensure that I get a degree without having to step on my own self of saying, no, you're not working hard enough. No, you're not going to pass with your other classmates, and the fact that you want to move along into that same 4-year degree as the rest of your classmates from high school. Well, some of your high school classmates, it didn't take them 4 years to complete college. For some of them, it took longer because of the pandemic. Some of them, it took longer because of other reasons. And I have to remind myself that balance of I chose to look at what I wanted to do for my career before I went to college. And that balance is okay. I knew what I wanted to do then. I knew that meant as I was looking into trying to find where do I want to go? What degree do I want to achieve? I realized that that balance, I found it. It was perfect tranquility whenever I could find a degree that was able to not only match what I wanted to do, but also stick with me as I was able to figure out how am I really going to make a difference in this world without throwing my whole life into an upper balance of uncertainty and my family as well.
Well,
So,
so it sounds like actually the possibilities are endless.
yes, absolutely. The
You're
possibilities are
very,
truly so endless, especially as a Penn State World Campus student.
yes.
It's been able to truly be so much of a joy where I've even been able to volunteer as part of being a Penn State on Penn State University campus,
Mhm.
where that might not have been possible unless I literally was able to advocate and push for the fact that I would like to do this. Penn State World Campus doesn't offer this. We can be inclusive over the fact that there are things that I'll be able to do, even if it means that I have to travel from a distance. I don't mind traveling from a distance. I live in between Penn State Altoona and Penn State University Park. I'm willing to make the distance to be able to say I am able to be the possible in the impossible situation
Yeah, and it
where
sounds like you advocate for yourself, that
yeah,
self-advocacy, which also is so important for educators to know, for students when they're in K through 12, and also for then you as a college student to be a self-advocate. So thank you so much for your
thank you.
sharing and conversation. As I said, there's much more that you could share with us. So
Definitely.
thank you.
For sure.
Okay, so
Thank you so much.
we're also now going to talk to Mia. Mia, if you are there. Hi, Mia. Welcome. Okay, so we're going to ask you a few questions as well. We talked a couple days ago, and just like Lavender, there was so much that I learned about you, and we could have a conversation for the entire webinar. But our first question is, so since you are not yet in college, what are you looking for as you think about college, and what plans are you taking now to help you make that decision?
Thank you, Robin, for having me.
Sure.
Um, I'm looking for a college where I can really belong, not just to take classes, but to also be part of the community as well. For me, that means a place that has strong music and arts programs, but also supports inclusion so students like me can thrive. This year, my teachers, my parents, and I are intentional about learning which schools in my area or maybe out of Pennsylvania will be good for me. We will be reaching out to schools and learning what kinds of support and programs are out there for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities that can also match our own passions. When I moved to this new high school, where I am today and where inclusion is part of the culture, I learned how important it is to feel welcome and supported. And I want that in college too.
Wow. So, you said a word there that is music to my ears, and when you say intentional, right? So it sounds like you are working with and have a team of educators and family support that are very thoughtful about helping you come up with a concrete plan for college, and that's wonderful. So it sounds like you've got some exciting things to explore and make decisions on. And we have another question for you, Mia. And that is, so you told us that you like to advocate and speak up at your IEP meetings about your goals and dreams. So why is that important to you, for you to speak up for yourself?
Well, it's important because my individualized education plan, IEP, or any other meeting that is about me. Well, it's about my life and my future. If I don't speak up, I might miss the chance to share my own words and my real goals. In middle school, I started telling my teachers things that I liked or didn't like, or things that worked for me better. I remember one time that I told them that it made me so overwhelmed when so many adults wanted to be supervising me so much. I wanted to feel more independent. I also shared with my IEP team that I wanted to sing and act and be on stage. I participated in my middle school theater, so it was nice to advocate. I spoke up. People started taking my dreams more seriously, and that made all of the difference.
Wow. So I hope that those who are listening can really hear how important it is for the student voice to really be able to share that, and for you to have the courage to do that, because it can be intimidating to be at some of these meetings at schools with lots of people. So, and then the second question is, what advice, oh, I'm sorry, if you could go back to question 2, thank you. What advice would you give to teachers to help their students speak up at IEP meetings?
Well, the advice is ask your students directly what they want and give them time to answer. Sometimes teachers or specifically adults talk over us because they think we don't know what to say, but we do. Also, I would tell teachers to listen to the students' caregivers or even the siblings because they have known their kid for a longer time. Also, I want to tell teachers and to adults to believe in us because we have so much to give and so much to share. I tell them not to treat us like babies.
Wow.
Treat us our age and to presume competence, to have lots of imagination when teaching in new ways because there are so many things we can all do.
Thank you for that. I mean, that can't be said any better. Just the fact that you said speak directly to you, right? Instead of speaking to someone else about you. And boy, that's right in line with your little video production that you have with Core Down, that whole message. So that's great. And the next question we have is question 3. So you've already accomplished a lot, Mia, with music and performing. You've had much success with that. So what are some additional goals that you have? And also, can you tell us about this passion for fashion that you have?
So some of my goals are to record my own songs, perform on even bigger stages, and keep using my voice to break stereotypes about Down syndrome. In October, I will be starting a project with songwriting, where I get to write my own songs and record them professionally. So in a few months, maybe you'll hear me on Spotify or iTunes. But I also love fashion as well. It's another way I like to express myself. Clothes tell a story. It's a way to communicate too. I would love to combine both passions, like creating outfits inspired by popular songs. I'd love to plan in the future small venue concerts combined with fashion shows where people feel represented and loved.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Those are excellent, wonderful goals to have and plans. And then our last question for you is, what barriers do you think need to be broken to create more possibilities for students to reach their own dreams?
The biggest barrier is low expectations. Too many times, people assume students with disabilities can't do certain things, and that stops opportunities before they even start. Sometimes it's difficult for me to express my thoughts and my feelings, especially when anxiety takes over. So it would be nice if people around me are patient and give me time to speak. It doesn't mean that I can't learn or I don't understand things. I just process things differently. Another barrier that I think is not having enough spaces or programs that presume competence and let us try. This is the year that me, my teachers, and my parents start researching for colleges options for me. I know they are going to miss me a lot, and I know. But I hope that there will be enough inclusive programs in colleges. We need those barriers down so students like me can also follow our dreams and passions just like anyone else.
Thank you, Mia. And thank you, Lavender. And we appreciate your time and giving those student perspectives. So we're going to hear some of those very same things from others, but boy, coming from you as the student, it's powerful. So now we're going to pivot to a few minutes to what we call legally speaking. When we think about the transition to post-secondary education, we want to talk at least a little bit about what are the key differences for students with disabilities. So in other words, sort of legally speaking, what's the difference between students who have IEPs in high school and those same students then, if they plan to go to college with students who do not have disabilities? So the simple way to view this basically is to say that there is no IDEA law, there's no special education law in college. So let's talk about a few of these specific points. So on this slide here, you'll see a little bit about the law, IDEA versus ADA/504. And what I want to tell you basically is that's one of the key differences, is the law applies in K through 12 is different than the law that applies in college. So the IDEA, for everyone's knowledge, is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it applies to students kindergarten through 12 years. It gives students with disabilities an entitled right to education through graduation, which can be age 21. 504, known as Section 504, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, is an anti-discrimination law. Okay, that basically says that individuals have the right to be free from discrimination based on disability. And then the next slide helps us to look at what are the purposes of these various laws. The purpose of the IDEA is to provide FAPE in the LRE. So some of you out there probably know what FAPE stands for, Free and Appropriate Public Education, and LRE stands for the Least Restrictive Environment. And that's basically that children with disabilities have the right to be educated alongside children without disabilities to the maximum extent appropriate. We sometimes call that the inclusion principle. In contrast, 504 and ADA, their purpose is to prevent unfair discriminatory treatment and to ensure equal access by providing reasonable accommodation. And that's the common term or phrase used in 504 and ADA. When we talk about eligibility, well, under the IDEA, there are 13 categories of disability defined, and if you meet one of those categories, then you are eligible. However, 504 and ADA defines disability, and we have a very simple definition, by looking at whether you have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. Then on the next slide, let's look at the differences in terms of services. If you have an IEP when you're in high school, you have a program, an appropriate program is required, and that's the actually individualized education plan. you may, as a student, have modifications to your curriculum. Now, just briefly, because sometimes there's confusion around what is modifications versus what are accommodations. And one way to look at this is to think about modifications as a change in what the student is taught or expected to learn. It's altering the curriculum, okay? As opposed to in college, you may have an accommodation plan. There's no IEP. An accommodation plan says that you must have equal and effective access to services. So one way to look at accommodations is the how the student will learn the same material as their peers. And so you're altering the environment, okay? Maybe providing extended test taking, note takers, preferred seating, etc. Another key difference is that the parent role is different K through 12. Under the IDEA, parents have a right to participate meaningfully in the development of the IDEA and of the IEP and the IEP process. Under 504 and ADA, students who are 18 are considered eligible students under FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. In other words, the students must give consent in order for anybody else, including parents, to have access to their education records. And the last item on this slide speaks to cost. Under the IDEA, your education does not cost anything. Under 504 and ADA, there is no provision for cost other than your accommodations are free, but the cost to attend college certainly is not. And then the next slide. And then in terms of school accountability. So again, if you're familiar with the IDEA, those of you who are here, you may have heard of child find. So under the IDEA, schools must look for students with disabilities to make sure that they provide an appropriate education for them. Under ADA and 504, the student must disclose a disability in order for and to request accommodations. And the last slide of my little spiel here is sort of a very basic way to look at high school IDEA law, and if you're in college, 504 ADA. On the left-hand side, talking to students, I would be saying, the school's going to find you, they're going to test you, and provide services if you qualify. But when you're in college, you, the student, must tell the college about your disability. They don't seek you out. In high school, under the IDEA, you get an IEP, that Individualized Education Program, and it's a detailed plan for learning and supports. In college, you get an accommodation letter or an accommodation plan. It is not an IEP. In high school, under the IDEA, you have supports that are known as special education supports, maybe related services, and that modified curriculum that I mentioned. In college, your supports are reasonable accommodations, and I've given you some examples there. And in high school, under the IDEA, parents are members of the team, and they help the students make decisions, although the students need to be members of their team earlier, the better, and no later than by the time they're age 16, at least need to be invited to the IEP meeting. But in college, you, the student, are in charge, and the parents are not part of the process unless you agree in writing, okay? So basically, I would say in summary that in high school, the IDEA law is about services and supports to help you learn. But in college, under 504 and ADA, the law is about equal access. You have to ask for what you need. Okay, so moving on to our next section here, we're going to talk about the myths about post-secondary education. So if we have the next slide, I think. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Domenico and to Thomas, and they're going to talk to you about the myths, the frameworks, and the models in nationwide and also in the state of Pennsylvania. So take it away, you two. Thank you.
Domenico, you're muted, man.
Thanks, Thomas. I had such wonderful things to say, and nobody heard me. I wanted to say thank you to Lavender and to Mia for such great comments and being such wonderful speakers and advocates. So good job and good luck. These myths, and we'll try to be very brief because I know we're trying to get all of this in time. And I want to thank Thomas as well for Thomas, my friend and colleague, who's really offered a lot of this information, the myths and other things that we'll be reviewing. But individuals with ID can't handle real college courses. Well, that's a myth, because with the appropriate supports and mentoring and services and the course selections and things like that, they certainly can be very successful. And it's all really about the curriculum and the goals of the students and the outcomes that are achieved. But there is no reason why students cannot handle college courses. Myth number two: these programs just social activities and not real education. Well, that's ridiculous. Although socialization is critically important. Our students, our students without disabilities, they go to college, and that's their primary goal is to socialize. But that is not particularly, the issue here. Social participation is really important. But they are engaged in coursework. They're engaged in career development. They're engaged in so many different things within the college environment and in the programs, that's how that social engagement begins to become and flourish. So there's a lot of social engagement there. Inclusive programs lower academic standards. Well, again, you heard Robin speak of the two differences between accommodations and the IEP and things like that. Well, there aren't any changes in the curriculum of a university or college. But the way that curriculum and that program is administered or provided to the students provides them with the ability to learn and to understand the content. So it's really matching the students' level of abilities with the content that's being presented and how it's going to fit within their life goals. So those are things that come out of that. And myth four: it's too expensive to sustain. Well, college is expensive, period, for anyone. And there is an expense initially, but through what we refer to as braided funding, looking at funding from different sources that will contribute to the college experience or the tuition, things like Medicaid waivers and vocational rehabilitation has gotten involved. Federal grants, family contributions, and even various entities out there that are able to provide support to individuals, individual grants to attend college. So there are a lot of opportunities. Of course, housing and food and things like that can be a little bit tricky to fund. Moving on to Thomas. Now you muted yourself, Thomas.
You'd think we'd learn after a while. It's only been years we've been doing Zoom. So thanks for for Robin and the Tash folks for putting this together. And listening to the students was great. I would have just as soon gone on listening to that. Let me just say, Mia, that colleges will be fighting what we do. I think you ended on myth 5. Is that right, Tom?
Yes. No, you do myth 5. Yes.
Yeah. So this is the big one that folks, say that students really just won't be accepted on campus. Will they really have friends? And what we find out is that absolutely, we've had incredible good fortune with students getting involved in all sorts of student activities, band, marching band, student government, so forth and so on. And the key here is intentionality. That if you recall in the old days when we talked about doing mainstreaming, we thought if we just tossed kids into typical classrooms, that all would be well. And of course, it was a dismal failure. And the same is true here, that when students come, they represent a different way of thinking, a different way of being, a different culture. And their non-disabled peers may initially not immediately connect. And as we support students to join clubs, to take leadership positions, to go to sporting events, so forth and so on, very intentionally, those things just wash away. You maybe would be surprised, but you probably shouldn't be. That they won't get jobs anyway. Well, I'll just keep this one short, and that is that the national data on students with intellectual disability becoming employed when they go to day programs, sheltered workshops, work activity centers, and so forth is about 16%. That's an 84% unemployment rate. Nationally, if a student graduates from an inclusive post-secondary ed initiative, the employment rate is somewhere around 73%. In Pennsylvania, at least the data from a couple of years ago, we were running above that. We were running about 85%. So the difference is, of course, stark. And it's not just that they're getting jobs, but they're getting jobs that are more career focused and at higher pay. So inclusion is just a fad. I've been hearing this for 50 years. There are decades and decades of research that show empirically that the number one path to having the good things in life is to be doing ordinary things in ordinary places with ordinary people. That inclusion is not a fad, it is indeed the pathway. It's what we try to accomplish with Americans with Disabilities Act, with the Higher Education Opportunity Act, with the international disability rights movements, that these are all about, folks belonging in society. And we have to guard in inclusive post-secondary ed against bringing special ed to college. There are over 300 initiatives across the country, and some of those initiatives have replicated what one might think of as traditional day programs, where they're sort of around campus, but they're not part of campus. We have to guard against that, because not only is inclusion not a fad, if you're not intentional about it, and maybe even a little rabid, it doesn't work well. So all these myths will persist. I'm sure there are, for you students out there and for you parents and so forth, that these are things you've seen for as long as you've been aware of what's going on with people with disabilities and systems that support them. And they persist because of the deep, deep cultural habit of devaluation. This will not go away. And so as we develop initiatives like we have here, again, we have to be rigorous about how we do it, when we do it, where we do it, and that we build opportunities for valued roles. So let's move on to the basics, yes. And I think actually, what I just told you about the cultural habits of devaluation, obviously that's in there. That inclusive higher ed is really focused on combining academic, social, vocational, in order to cause students to have the good things of life. We interviewed several presidents of universities and asked them what percentage of the college experience is academics. if we were talking, I'd say, what do you guess? Take a guess. Every president answered, they must have a book somewhere about it. Every president answered that academics for all students was about 25% of the college experience. It's not that the content and the academics don't build career and competencies and expertise and specialists and so forth. They do. But absent the social, the ability to have independent living competencies, have relationships and so forth, absent that, the competencies fall short of what is needed in society. And so, you know, the basics basically are have to be all inclusive. You can, yeah, right, it's good. You can jump to the next, yeah. So let me just see here, make sure I got what I wanted to say there. I want to, oh, you jumped to the framework. Could you go back a slide? Yeah. Let me just talk a little bit about this now. I feel like probably folks here know what inclusive post-secondary is, but maybe you don't. And so let me just take a minute to underscore. It's going to college. And the idea is that for people with intellectual disabilities who have typically been cast into devalued roles, the goal is to put them in the role of scholar, of student, and so that folks are recognized not by limitation but by membership, that they're treated as learners, emerging professionals, contributors to campus life and activities that they're involved in. Folks take real college courses and they audit them. They are involved in career development, as goes on for all students. The initiatives that I have been involved with are intentional and focused about social membership and developing independence. So we had one student. I don't know, some will think this is kind of a good thing. Others will be kind of freaked out. And some will think, oh, that's cool. Who called, her mother called me on a Friday night and said that they hadn't been able to get a hold of their daughter since Wednesday. And they had a tracker on her phone. I advise against that. And they knew that her phone was in her dorm room since Wednesday, which they were concerned about. Now, FERPA didn't allow me to, you know, tell the parent where they are or anything, but we can do a well student check. And so we got the police and we did a well student check and we went into the dorm room and indeed, as the parent had told us, the student's phone was in the dorm room, but the student wasn't there. And when we asked her roommate, what her roommate said was, oh, she went over to her boyfriend's house, but she knows her mother tracks the phone. So she left her phone in the dorm room. And we knew the boyfriend, she was fine, everything was good. We could tell the family that, you know, she was fine. And we reached out to her and asked her to contact the family, but that's all we could do. And as you see, that this is such an ordinary thing to do. It is a clear development of autonomy and developing independence. That when students with intellectual disability come out of the special ed system, whether it was really, really good or really, really bad, and as all students, they need to begin to develop identities of who they are, what they want to do, and so forth. And so that the whole intent of college for students with intellectual disability is to build identities, to cause them to be learners, friends, workers, citizens. That and when that happens in intentional ways, the outcomes are profound. And they're on the path to having the good things of life that they can claim for their own. That all of this happens, hang on, I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, all of this happens with support. So the initiatives that I'll tell you about in in a little bit. All hire undergraduate students, graduate students, graduate interns, and so forth as mentors and coaches. They walk with them, instruct, they don't do for. And so they have the support they need when they need it, doing ordinary things. And it works it just works amazingly. Let's see, now you can flip to the next, yeah, I want to tell you about just a couple of organizations. And I'm gonna, in a minute here, when Dom is talking, I am going to put in links to these to the organizations that many of you probably already know about. PennTASH is one, and maybe some of you both. There is Think College, which is the National Coordinating Center. You can go there and look for colleges across the country. If they're 4-year, 2-year residential, the kinds of programs there, the kinds of support they have, so forth and so on. So a student can go and then go on college visits. And so Think College is a great place to start that. There is the AUCD has an inclusive higher ed committee. I'll put in a link for that. There are several, the National Down Syndrome Association is a huge, not only supporter, but has worked tirelessly for accreditation. Speaking of that, the Inclusive Higher Education Accreditation Council now accredits programs. So they're early on, but you can begin to look for things there. And let me just say that the person here from Evanston, Illinois, should check out Edgewood University in Wisconsin. It's close, it's inclusive, they do a great job. I will put some of the links to all of these things. We have PIHEC, which is the Pennsylvania Inclusive Higher Education Consortium. There's also the Mid-Atlantic Alliance. These are things relevant to our district. I'll put a few other examples in there. I'll just stick the URLs in there. And I think also the handouts that I've been looking at that we created will be passed out to you when this is over. And I think, Dom, you are doing the next one.
Yes, and Thomas, you raised some real important issues there. I mean, as students go on to college and become more individuals, other issues come up that have never really been thought of, and parents need to kind of acknowledge that their children grow up just like anyone else and have the same adult feelings and needs as everyone, and it has to be looked at in a very unique way. But these are just various models that exist, and these are just some things that when you look at programs, you have to understand that these programs do have a variety of ways in which they administer their, for a lack of a better word, services. But some of the models that do exist are the dual enrollment model, where high school students may be taking college courses and classes. They may get some supports from both systems, the university or the college and the school. And it's also a good way for students to get that early campus exposure. So that's one idea. And this is a good transition kind of, strategy to kind of review. And this is also good to check to see, particularly those students who may have the capacity to be a student in a degree program. Well, let's check out their ability to do college work at the community college or a college like that when it's safe and has the kind of supports that are needed. Cohort model, that is where students with disabilities enter in small groups. They tailor the classes to that group or to groups. It's sort of like the model that I will be speaking of in our SILS program, where students come in cohorts, and each cohort then provides or does a certain level of certain coursework that is assigned. Individual support, full integration in typical courses, where housing, clubs, employment pathways are really kind of tailored to the individual. Individualized supports are provided for that to happen. The hybrid mix, where it's a blend of cohort and individual services. It's often, begins within a group, and then maybe the student can break away and become more individualized and work as a student on an individual basis. And again, using the university services to lead them and to guide them along the way. And then of course, there's other models that, may have not, that we may not have mentioned here. Next. I think Thomas and I will kind of go through these together. I'll just begin. Thomas talks about, the importance of valued roles. Throughout our history, in terms of people with disabilities, Thomas mentioned 50 years in the field, 47, 48 years for myself. I mean, we both started looking at individuals who were just leaving institutional settings. And from that, model, from those kinds of environments, they were not valued at all as individual citizens. Well, we've grown as a society and certainly have grown as a field. And, there has been an evolution throughout our educational system to where now we're talking about students or individuals with disabilities going to a college level. And their role as individuals have now become much more valued and valuable to themselves and to all of us in society. So it creates a valued role in them. So the principle of valued roles is very critical to really consider when one goes on to college. Authentic participation, the idea that, you are involved in an environment where everything is real. It's not contrived. It's not made up. It's a real environment. And kids, or students will participate in these activities, and they will establish those relationships and systems where they're nurtured to participate and really get, a sense of inclusion that is real and not, contrived in any way. You want me to go on, Thomas, or do you want to?
No, I think actually I was thinking, Don, that it's like almost 7:45.
Yeah. Okay.
And I
Yep.
think we should just let them.
Yeah, these are pretty self-explanatory in some ways. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, like, you might want to say something about East Strasburg.
Sure.
But I'll put some links in for the other ones, and then
Okay.
we should jump right into Q&A.
Right. So let's move on to the next slide after this. Yeah. So goals and outcomes. East Stroudsburg University, we have the Career Independent Living and Learning Studies, and I'll just be real brief about that. Just a description. That is our program. There is a hybrid type of program where there are courses that are designed to be provided to the students so they can develop their independent living skills. And then, of course, they audit courses that are designed to meet their interests. So, for example, if a student is interested in working in the childcare field, well, then they would be taking courses in the early childhood development area. So they would be taking courses that are going to be relevant to their interests and to those kinds of outcomes that exist. And we make those connections early on through the process of what we refer to as person-centered planning, where we really look at an individual and try to establish a plan for them based on their desires and dreams and outcomes. One thing that that is different than some others, we do not have on-campus housing at the moment, but on-campus housing is not available to us. But there is housing off campus in which a student house manager lives in the house to provide the safety net for students who are living there. And there's mentors and students who are mentors and that will guide them along the way. But there's a safety net for individuals. And what that does is allows us to accept and look at students who might not necessarily be accepted in other university settings because of their nature of need and support levels that they have. So that's the uniqueness of our program. You can go on to the next, Thomas.
I think I'll just put some links in there. Those universities you see there, Duquesne, Gwinnett, Mercy, Millersville, St. Joe's and Temple all represent fully inclusive initiatives. They're part of the TIPSID. I'm glad to say more if you want me to after we're done here, but I think we should do Q&A. Don't you, Robin?
Yeah, it's up to you, Robin. I mean, I could
Yeah,
certainly.
so no, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I want to make sure if anybody has specific questions then about the programs during the Q&A that you can provide that. This last slide that you have here, thinking about college, if everyone can take a look at that, these are really good questions to consider. And one of the things I wanted to point out, because there was some discussion about, is my IEP used in college? And, one of the things that, the IEP is not required. And as I said, when I spoke earlier for college, different colleges, however, will use the IEP not only to verify disability, but also may look at that to sort of guide maybe what supports maybe you could be used in terms of reasonable accommodations. And depending on what program, these hybrid or cohorts or whatever, that IEP may be a guide for or continuation of the services and supports they need. Okay, so I just wanted to sort of give that clarification.
Robin, can I say something about that as
Yeah,
well?
please do.
Because you're absolutely correct. And there are many universities that don't want to see that at all. Like Millersville, they won't take it. They don't even want you to bring it in. They have a little bit of an attitude about it. But so just be aware of that. Because you approach it from 504 and accommodation, you can take stuff off of the IEP,
Yes.
but just presenting them with it, they get very nervous. It could be they get nervous legally. I don't know that, but
Well, and I think that's where the confusion is, right? Because if they bring the IEP, there's this sense that, they're using the IEP. I think they want to make that distinction. So, but we have heard from students who say, my colleges use my IEP, but it's what that really means. So just to be clear on that, and you're absolutely right. Some schools are like, hands off. The IEP was K through 12. We're in a new situation now. Let's go from there. So,
And in fact, if I can just say just one thing about that is that the many schools who are going to support the students financially, for that student while they're still in high school, want that IEP. And I simply say, well, we are not doing the IEP. We cannot acknowledge or take the IEP. But what we will do is if you want to include the IEP, then you include the curriculum or the program is SILS. So it becomes the program and that becomes the IEP. So it kind of solves that issue because again, schools do have that legal obligation to fulfill the IEP. And then it becomes the program that will fulfill that IEP goal.
Yes. And so what you said just fits nicely into the whole theme, which is possibilities, right? I mean, there's ways to be creative and there are so many different options out there. And, even if there isn't a model or program out there right now that you think may be good for your student or for your son or daughter, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to try to work and model different, through creativity and the IEP process and transition process. So if we can go to the next slide, we have about 10 minutes in remaining. We wanted to have a little bit more time for Q&A, but we will do what we can here. So let's open up and see. I don't know, Betsy, if there have been any questions that you identified or any comments, but feel free, everyone, to put those in the Q&A and we'll try to pull some of those out.
So we don't have any questions in the Q&A, but we do have one offline, so we can address that one perhaps. And that is for families of students who are in elementary and middle and high school. What can they focus on now to prepare for college or inclusive higher education?
great question. My short answer, and I suspect Dom has a better answer. My short answer is two things. One, start doing 100% inclusive and start using supports in order to make that possible. And in your senior or senior plus years, start taking courses and using public transportation to go to local universities or community colleges.
And I would agree with what Thomas just said, but again, even at that early age, start asking the child or the student what they want to do. What are their, life aspirations? But I know it's kind of silly to be, looking at a fifth grader and say, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? But you know what? Most of the time they're never asked that question. So why not start asking that question? We ask that question to everybody else, but most people with disabilities are not really asked. So we have to continue to ask the question, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? What do you want to do? And try to make sure that the school provides the necessary academic and educational environment to allow that student to progress along that line. Lou Brown had a wonderful statement. If it takes this much to teach someone and you only have this much time, well, then you better start really early. So find out what they need to know and what's important so you can scaffold their learning each year along the way. So it's important that individuals are developing each year toward the goal and that they want to achieve. And it's not always going to be going to college. Maybe it is gaining a job or getting something like that. But doing things that are typical, doing things that are functional and relevant to the student. That's the kind of things that are going to lead them to becoming happy and be valued as members of society.
When
And
you're
I
setting
add-
up an IEP, and I'm going to answer that funding question then. When you're setting up an IEP, remember that content, which is what most progress monitoring is done, not most, but much, content is just an excuse to develop as a human. This is true for everybody. And when we get focused on learning the math or learning the English, and we forget about that life is relational, then we got a problem. And when you get to college, then you're not prepared at all. Content is just an excuse to emerge as a human. Can I address the funding issue? Is that okay, Robin? Were you ahead?
Yeah, if I could just add, I wanted to add two more pieces of advice to that question because
Yep.
I'm a real big believer in teaching skills around self-advocacy. Just individuals going to college, whether you have a disability or not, we all could use more teaching and modeling about being our own self-advocates and self-determination. And the other thing that I think is real important, and this relates to what you're saying, Thomas, about the content, it's almost more important, I think, for students to know how they themselves learn, their own learning process. And I think we can do a better job in our school systems to help students be more self-aware. And I think Lavender was a great example of how well she demonstrates her own needs and awareness around executive functioning and so forth. So yeah, go ahead, take it, Thomas.
While I'm doing this, Dom, would you put the link to your initiative in there, please? Yeah. Let's see. Okay, funding. College isn't cheap. It's not cheap for anybody, and if and we have to charge what we charge, or the programs won't exist. So the TIPSA initiatives all charge basically what everybody else pays. At Millersville University, a student going into integrated studies actually pays more. So all in at Millersville University, dorm, tuition, fees, everything is $25,000. On top of that, students in integrated studies pay an additional $11,000 a year for program fees. That's $36,000. I want to point out that that's still cheaper than the typical sheltered workshop. But there's still a lot of money. And so Millersville, I created the program that way, and so did several of the other TIPSITs, because if we didn't, then when the belt tightening happens, the first program to go are the initiatives that welcome students with intellectual disability. So how do you pay for it? And in Pennsylvania, we are privileged to have Medicaid waiver pay for tuition and fees. There's a ceiling on the tuition, but the fees, there's no ceiling on. And so that's very helpful. There's also Pell Grants. So if you're eligible for that, you can get a Pell Grant. Most universities have some sort of scholarship program. I know Millersville does. There are also private scholarship programs. I we're short on time, so I can't, they're not in my head. Dom, do you have another comment about funding?
The Dream, I think the Dream Foundation.
Oh, Dream Partnership
Yeah.
has for years been doing this. I'll put their link in
Right.
here.
No, I think you hit, like we were trying to say earlier, you have to look at all the possible funding availability that's there. And Thomas is right. The Medicaid waiver has really been very instrumental in allowing funding to be used for education in programs like ours. So, yeah.
Get those 529s going now.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the time here. We have 4 minutes left, which means we just have a couple of housekeeping things. Want to thank everybody so much for their participation and being with us tonight. So a few reminders. We have our future webinars next week, the 10th, and also the following week on September 17th. We will send all of you who are here an email to let you know when the TASH YouTube channel is up with the recording and numerous resources that we mentioned tonight, and some of those we put in the chat. We also have a survey we'd like you to complete just to give us feedback. And as I said, we mentioned the upcoming webinars. So let's see, I think we have one more slide. Yes. So this is what we want to sort of send you off with. Again, thank you for joining, but we have a video here that is called Think Higher and Think College, and it disappeared for the moment, but we'll bring it back. And we would like you to watch it for 4 minutes if you still can stay on, and it should inspire you with more stories about different possibilities for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So thank you, everybody. And let's see, do we have Donald or Betsy that is putting on the video for us?
Hi everyone, I'm a student here at Georgia Tech. We are asking students with intellectual disabilities around the country what's fun about going to college.
Is a chance to not be around your parents.
The best thing about being in college is the food. Being in a dorm, getting to meet new people.
You have a bed, you have a sink, you have a desk, you have a TV, and you have a refrigerator. You can also hang up posters anywhere.
Great mocha latte, the best mocha latte I ever have.
There are more than 420,000 school-age students with intellectual disability, but only 2% of them are likely to attend college after high school.
I wanted to come to KU because of the classes, and I wanted to take choir. And also I took American Sign Language.
The classes I'm taking right now are Business Law 1, Intermediate Algebra, and English Composition 2.
It's cool to meet new people. It's fun to chat with the guys and the managers and the coaches.
I wanted to be more independent and to join the sorority as my mom did.
I like to hang out with friends, watch sports, and I joined the Southernmost Coral Restoration Club.
In high school, I have to be with a teacher all the time, so it was not like any dependent there. I was excited to have like the college life.
There are more than 300 inclusive post-secondary education programs around the country.
Having students with disabilities in classes has compelled our faculty to reflect on their practice. So it actually makes us better teachers, makes us better professors, makes us better scholars and researchers.
It's really got people to realize that we have to focus on universal access and doing things in universal design, everything that we do.
The great thing about including students with intellectual disabilities at KU is actually it makes the entire university a better university. It teaches students to appreciate difference, and it creates a more caring environment because students support each other.
This has united, I think, our campus, faculty, staff, and students. They have the opportunity to network and get mentors and other social skills and career development that their peers have had for many years. Now they have.
I want to go into real estate in the future.
My goal is to be a teacher at a preschool.
I would know that one a bed and breakfast.
Political science is one of 3 career goals I have in mind.
My credo is maybe work in the Kansas State Capitol.
I would like to have my own food truck because I want to have pizza, have some burgers, maybe have some tacos, nachos.
College has changed me because it's helped me grow up, like getting a job or living on your own.
It's great, and you'll have a lot of support when you get here.
If I can do it, you can do it, you know?
It's a time to be serious. It's a time to learn. I have the skills. I have the skills to live on my own one day.
Think higher. Think college for students with intellectual disability. Think access, employment, equity, options, diversity, independence, confidence, friendship. College is possible for students with intellectual disability. Take the first step at thinkhighered.net, a project of Think College.